I think we underestimate stress. I think stress has just become so normalized in our society that we underestimate the power of stress and what stress is taking away from us, and possibly what stress is doing to us and our lives long term. And don't get me wrong, stress is important. Stress is necessary. You know, as we all know, like, stress on the body is necessary to make us stronger. And stress at work is necessary to meet the deadline. Stress is necessary to buy a home, to have a family. You know, so I think progress in life, I think it needs stress, and stress can be good. I think the problem that I want to talk about in this video is residual stress. I think I want to talk about the stress that we carry with us. And that's something that for a long time I totally underestimated. In fact, I just completely ignored it. And I think it was because I was looking at stress in the wrong way. For a long time, the problem that I had, and the problem that I see many of my clients having now, is that I think in society we can be forgiven for looking at stress like the weather. You know, we can think of like high intense bouts of stress like a thunderstorm. You know, so like basically it's just the idea is just weather the storm. It'll pass. You know, if we've got a stressful period of time at work, or we've got a stressful time at home with the family, or we've got, you know, a stressful challenge, physical challenge, then we just think to ourselves, you know what, like, it's all right, it'll pass. And of course, most of the time it does. You know, absolutely, it will not stay that frantic, that intense forever. It's a moment in time and it'll pass. And so we can be forgiven, like I did, for thinking that, you know, a stressful week at work will clear on the Friday. and you know, you'll wake up Saturday morning and the thunderstorm's passed. It's all blue skies and sunshine and happy days. We're back to zero. And we can go back in the next Monday and we're fresh. And sadly, stress doesn't work like that. Weather is not a great analogy for stress. And that's something that I discovered. You know, that's something that I found out during the past 10 to 12 years. And I discovered that by working in a very stressful environment, you know, in a corporate job, when I worked for one of the top 4 firms, the Big Four. And during that time, we went through the pandemic. Objectively, probably one of the most stressful times for many of us, personally and professionally. During the pandemic, while working a corporate job, I had to manage and help our family. My wife was heavily pregnant when we went into lockdown, and we had our youngest child born during the thick of the pandemic in 2020. And so I had this stressful period of time. Yet all the while, I kept thinking to myself, it's just a moment in time, it'll pass, and then all will be well. And I think many of us can be forgiven for thinking the same thing. Whether that be on like a micro scale, thinking about it in days and weeks or maybe even hours, or maybe it be on a macro scale, thinking, we got through a year, 18 months, 2 years of kind of lockdowns and pandemic and things. We're out of it now. All is fine. We wipe the slate clean and we start from zero. But stress stays with us. We carry it with us. And that is something that I learned. And that is something that I try to work on with my coaching clients. Because I think what we forget is that stress is like a bucket. And if we think about it like a bucket with a handle on that we carry around with us everywhere, it can be a bit more helpful. And so maybe the solution to this, maybe the way in which to better think about stress, is that we fill our bucket. And so every stressful thing that happens, every challenge, every deadline, every unexpected illness or crisis, that is a cup of water that is going to be thrown into our bucket. And rather than just emptying that bucket out when the crisis ends, or when the illness ends, the challenge ends, or the deadline is met, instead of that, we actually pick the bucket up and carry it with us. Now, yes, when these moments, these periods of intense stress finish, yes, okay, yeah, we can pour a little bit out. We can walk around with our bucket, we can find the nearest gutter, and we can pour it out a little bit. Fine, great. The problem, however, is that we've still got some water left in our bucket. And so when we continue our journey, when we carry on walking, holding and carrying our bucket is not completely empty. And then what happens? Well, of course, shit happens. Life happens. And before you know it, we've got another cup of water and we're pouring that in. And we've got another cup of water and we're pouring that in. And then the crisis comes to an end, or that bout of problems or project or whatever that may be is finished, and we can find the gutter again and we can pour a little bit of water out of our bucket. But sadly, as is the nature of stress, we very, very rarely empty it all. Because to completely empty our bucket, it takes more than just a Friday night drink or a Saturday lie-in or a spa day with our friends. They're great, but they are not going to completely empty our bucket. And so I think it's important to think about stress not as if it were a thunderstorm, but instead as if it were water in a bucket. And so let's now talk about what we can do with this new way of framing stress. Well, first and foremost, we need to stop underestimating stress. We need to give it the respect that it deserves. Because every single time that these intense bouts of stress happen, our bucket is slowly but surely left with that little bit more of residual stress within it. And so we need to try to find tools and techniques that work for you, that help you to get rid of that residual stress. And sometimes that takes time. Sadly, sometimes there is no other cure than just time spent walking around to all of the nearby gutters and just emptying out that bucket. And just when you think it's empty, try again. Just check. Just go up and try and empty that again. And I think if we visualize this, if we try now to think about our reframe stress, what does this really look like for you? Well, maybe that looks like, okay, we've had a stressful period of time at work. You know, we've had a 5-6 week project that's rolled on and on and on. Meanwhile, you know, we've had illness at home. Meanwhile, we've had a family conflict to deal with. Meanwhile, we've been challenging ourselves physically, trying to lose weight and get fit. We've had stress upon stress upon stress. But it's okay because we're going to go on holiday. And so we go and have this big blowout, this holiday, whatever that looks like for you. A city break, you know, relaxing on the beach, reading our favourite book, having a glass of wine, whatever that may be. And great, we are starting now to empty our bucket. Super. And this is working, and that's effective for you. Okay, but what else? Let's visualize longer term what that should look like. What's going to help prevent us from getting into the same critical space that we were left in, that meant that we absolutely needed that holiday, that we were really on the brink. Because for many of us, we don't quite reach that. For many of us, something happens before we can start emptying our bucket. And what that is when our bucket overflows. And so if we don't regularly stop, take a step back and take stock of how full our bucket is, then we could be in real trouble. And when our bucket overflows, that could look like a few different things. So for some people, that could be a panic attack. For others, it could be a complete numbness. You know, almost like a freeze, whereby we just feel incapable of functioning day to day. For other people, it could be extreme exhaustion or illness. Or, like a friend of mine, it could mean collapsing in a supermarket aisle. And so to visualize this new way of reframing stress, what's important is that when we identify these things that are adding to our bucket, it could be time to say, enough. It might be time in the future for you to say, actually, do you know what? I've got enough in here already. I'm carrying enough with me. So one of these is going to have to give. Maybe that's the work project. Maybe you're going to need to say, do you know what? Actually, I need to take a step back. Maybe it's that physical challenge you've set yourself. Maybe now is not the time to try to run a marathon. Maybe it's the home. Maybe, you know, the illness or the conflict at home is something that you need help with. Maybe that means like outside help, you know, asking loved ones, you know, to help support you. Or maybe that means looking for professional help, you know, with conflict resolution. Whatever that is for you, I think to visualize the future in this way means to reframe stress, give it the respect that it deserves, and have the space to be able to step back and say, okay, enough. So what we've done in this video is we've spoken about the problem, and the problem isn't stress itself. The problem really is the residual stress that we carry with us. And we've spoken about how we can help to solve that problem by looking at stress in a different way. Then we visualize what that looks like in the future. By reframing stress, we then get to actually identify those times when our bucket is full to capacity. And I think lastly, what I would love to do now is to invite you to take stock of your capacity right now. What is your relationship with stress? It's different for everybody. At the moment, I run 6-week coaching blocks for people who are trying to manage their stress, to overcome maybe too much stress, and create space for themselves so that they don't rely upon stress, so that actually they give themselves the time and the energy to live life to the full. And if this is something that resonates with you, if this is something that would benefit you, then please click the link below. It'll take you to a page whereby you can book in for a free consultation with me. We can get to know one another. We can see whether it's a fit. Maybe we can explore what might help you. And then if it is a fit, we can then book in for a 6-week block. And over that period of time, try to look at how you're living through a slightly different lens and help you get from where you are now to where you want to be.